Hey everybody, Steve Fredlund here once again with the RecPoker podcast. As always, sponsored by Running Aces, Racetrack, and Casino. And today we've got a couple of things to share with you. One is an interview that I did with Emanuel Evegen. Emanuel is a really cool story. He just won the Running Aces Pot of Gold tournament. It was a $290 buy-in. And he won it for $29,000. And what's cool about his story is that he got in through a free roll. He played Running Aces free roll, $10 he added on to get a couple of additional chips, came in late, entered with 7 big blinds, ran it up, won the seat, and then he ended up being one of the chip leaders going into day 2 of the main event and ended up winning the main event. And it's a really cool story, so I thought it would inspire a lot of you recreational players out there. So I'm going to share that interview that I did with Emanuel. And then at the end of this, we're going to then share another discussion that we had with our Monday night community group where we talk about different hands. And specifically, we're going to talk about a hand, an ace-king hand. And then we're going to talk a bit about playing pocket tens. So I hope you enjoy this show. All right, everybody. Well, I am here as promised with Emanuel Evegen, who is the winner of the Pot of Gold tournament at Running Aces this March. And it's a really cool story. And I was talking with E at the table, and we thought this would be a good interview because it's a pretty cool story. So first of all, Emanuel, just congratulations, man, publicly. What a huge victory.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it, man. I worked hard for this moment, you know.
We'll talk a little bit about that. But before we get into the tournament, talk a little bit about, you said you've been working hard. How has that been looking?
Well, lately I've been actually studying a lot of Jonathan Little stuff.
Yep.
You know, just like I had signed up for his for the free 7-day trial, but it expired. so now I'm actually going to go ahead and buy the course because it's only like $300, I think, for like 3 years or something like that. But I've just been, you know, watching a lot of videos and, you know, learning about minimum defense frequencies and, you know, hand ranges and just a lot of stuff that I was unaware of before. I mean, I knew some of the concepts, but he breaks it more in depth. And, you know, so I just been trying to, you know, learn as much as I can because I believe poker is more skill than luck. I mean, obviously there's a luck factor, but there's a reason why you see the top guys staying on top, you know? So I was like, I want to learn as much as I can. And I used to be a part of an online poker group called Online Poker Syndicate. And we used to do studies, like we would do hand reviews. Like I used to play a lot online. I have like probably 15K in earnings on there, which isn't much, but I played micros, you know?
Yeah.
so it's decent. We would like watch videos. We'd always go back and review the videos and, you know, go over spots like, oh, I could have did this, or I could have raised this much, or I could have did that. But we haven't really got together in a couple of years. I don't really know why. We just kind of, you know, everyone just kind of drifted apart. So yeah, I kind of want to get back to another study group.
That's cool. Yeah, you're always welcome to join us. We have a discussion group that we do on Monday nights too, but I just think it's so valuable to have those groups where you can actually bounce ideas off each other. Like you mentioned, the Jonathan Little training and a lot of trainings that are out there are so good. They're usually sort of one-way communications. They kind of break it down and help you learn some stuff, and there's a ton of value in that. But like you're saying, there's also value in having a group where you can actually go back and forth and interact and that sort of thing. So that's awesome, dude.
Exactly. Yeah, we would use like TeamViewer and Skype, and then also Hold'em Manager, and we would, you know, replay so like someone had a big score in the group. There's a couple of guys that had like 30K, 50K, stuff like that. We would, you know, go back and watch the whole tournament and then go over spots. You know, like, oh, I would have did this, or I would have raised this much, or I would do this, and you could have checked there, or you could have, you know, raised that spot. Then we would learn off each other. You know.
Yeah.
So it was actually. Yeah, it was I don't know if you heard of 4-to-1 Dog. He's pretty huge in online poker.
No.
There was a couple guys from his group, and yeah, it was pretty solid, man. I don't know why we kind of drifted apart, but yeah, I would definitely want to be interested in joining your group too, because I definitely think that's a good way to learn off of other people, you know.
For sure, yeah.
Having, you know.
Yeah, especially I think that's my encouragement always to anybody. If you really want to learn the game, you know, get some formal training if that works for you, but also just that interactive, have a group of people. The key, I think, to that whole thing is just being completely transparent and not pretending you're better than you are, or, you know, asking those questions that you have, and not being afraid to look dumb in front of your peers, because I think that's how we all learn. So that's cool. That's awesome, dude.
Exactly. There's no question is a stupid question. You know, as long as you're willing to learn and willing to put in the work, anybody can succeed in the poker. That's what attracted me to poker. I'm not very good at sports. I can't rap. I can't sing. I'm not an actor. You know what I mean? But
right.
I can play cards. You know what I mean? And anybody can play cards. You see people in wheelchairs, winning big events. So that's what attracted me to the game. It's like anyone can be successful if you're willing to put in the work and the dedication.
Yeah,
and you can handle the thing.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned the luck versus skill thing. I think the way that I think about it is, for any given hand, for any given tournament, luck is a pretty big factor. But over the long term, it's all about making the right decisions, and that's where the skill comes in. So I think like what you're doing is you continue to try to get better, continue to always make better and better and better decisions, and ultimately you become more consistent as a winner. But I think what's cool about the game is that on any given day, anybody can win, which is kind of a combination of things. So let's talk a little bit about your experience now at the Pot of Gold, because I love this thing that started on a Monday night. Running Aces every Monday night has a free roll, which you can enter the tournament for like no cost. You can add on a little bit, but it's basically just kind of a way for anybody to play tournament poker. So talk a little bit about your free roll. How much did you add on for? What did that look like on the night where you won the ticket to play the main event?
Okay, well, it was kind of funny because like my girl doesn't get off work. We share a vehicle currently. I'm going to be buying a new vehicle, obviously, but we share vehicles, and so she doesn't get off of work until 4:45, and she works. She's a school teacher. She works in South Minneapolis, so I had to race to pick her up, kind of get to the free roll, and so I got there about 5:45, and I was thinking I would be okay. Well, it ended up being an hour late. So I was like, I only had like $25 on me. So I was like, well, I'm going to get $6 to go get some fried rice because I get the discount from the club rewards and everything. And I was like, and then I'll get, I bet like one hand on baccarat or something and won an extra $5. So we had $20. So I was like, so we had about 20 something dollars. I think it was about $24 exactly what I had. So I gave my girl $12 so she could do one add-on and the buy-in. And then I did one add-on and the buy-in. And we ended up waiting like almost a whole hour. It was almost 7 o'clock. So I almost wanted to go back up there to ask him, can I get my $20-something back? I'm thinking like, bro, I'm only going to have 5 or 6 big blinds now, Well,
just to interject there, everybody. So the tournament starts at 6 o'clock, and I know a lot of people that play the free roll get there like 4:30. So your girl getting there at 5:45, you're not getting until 7 o'clock. It's a hyper turbo structure. You get 2,500 in starting chips, and your add-ons were another 5,000.
You get 2,000 actually. You get 2,000
or 2,000. So you end up with you're starting with 7,000 chips, and by the time you get in there, the blinds are probably 500 to 1,000. You probably do have about 7 bigs by the time you're getting there. Just to kind of lay the land for everybody that's not familiar with this hyper turbo free roll. So you're getting in an hour late. 200 and some people probably, and you have 7 big blinds.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
And it was actually 214 people exactly, as I remember.
All right.
And so finally I get a seat. I sit down. First hand I get A6 offsuit. I'm under the gun. It's not a spot that I normally would take, but because I only had like 7 big blinds, the blinds are 500,000. I sat down with 7,000, and there's an ante. So I was like, well, I think I have to shove there with any ace. So I just ship it. And the guy in the small blind calls with pocket 5s. The flop is clean for him, and then it turns an ace. Nice. And I double up, and I just never look back after that. Next thing you know, I'm at the final table. I'm like asking everyone, like, hey, you guys want to chop? A couple of people didn't want to chop, so we just ended up battling it out. It actually got down to me and Chris, the tournament director.
Yep.
We were heads up, and I offered him. I was like, hey, Chris, I'll give you extra 50 because I had way more chips than him. I was like, I'll give you extra $50 if you just let me take, first place. Because we were all guaranteed a seat at 7-handed. So now we're just playing for the money. It was like $814 up top. So I offered him $50 out of that towards second place, and then we chopped it. He didn't want to do it, and then we played heads up, and I won. Okay, so I won $814 off the $10 plus the seat.
You turn the $10 into $814 plus, the way Running Aces does it when they have tournaments coming up, they often give away like 5 or 7 seats. So the top 7 finishers get a seat. So you turn $10 into $814 plus a $280 seat for the Pot of Gold main event.
Exactly.
Okay, so then we'll fast forward that. That's awesome. Obviously, that's a great result, just that in alone. But now fast forward, and now you so you played day one, and tell us a little bit about your experience of day one of the Pot of Gold tournament.
Day one was just pretty smooth selling. I mean, I think the lowest I got down to was like maybe 10K. I was raising, and then c-betting a few times and not hitting flops, and people were re-raising me, and I would just fold. If I don't hit anything like ace king or ace queen, I don't really like to chase. If it's like a really wet board texture that hits my opponent's range, like 7, 8, 9 suited or something, or 7, 8, 9 with like two suits, and I have like ace king of spades or something. I'm just laying that down. I don't like to chase, so I lost a few spots like that. I think I lost with like pocket jacks versus like ace queen or something like that. And so I was down to like 10,000. And then we went on break, and I told myself, don't give up. Just keep grinding, because I didn't have like rebuy money or anything like that. I had one bullet,
Well, and the beauty of the main event structure is that, you have half-hour levels now. So when you're on break, that 10,000 chips, which is half of your starting stack, you're probably coming back to blinds like 2-4 or something. You still got like 25 big blinds.
Exactly.
Desperate, and it's not like free roll 10-minute blinds. You got some time to be patient still.
Right. Exactly. So I just was played patiently. And in one hand, I do remember the hand that doubled me up was actually a guy raises from like cutoff position with 2 jacks, and I'm on the button with like 9-8 suited. And actually, I think he was MP +2, so he was in the hijack actually. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I think it's the hijack he was in, because it was hijack, then cutoff, then I'm on the button. Yep. So the guy in the hijack raises with 2 jacks. I'm on the button with 9-8 of spades. A couple, I think small blind and big blind call it too. The raise, he like min raise or something, like 2.5x or something like that.
Yep.
And so we all call, and the flop came 9-8 deuce.
Nice.
Rainbow. so I got top 2 pair. Guy bets like
he
2,500.
Loves his jacks.
Yeah, he loves his hand. He's not getting away from it. He makes it 2,500. I raise the 5,000. He puts me all in, and I call, and then he doesn't improve with the jacks, and I double up. And the next thing I know, I went from 20,000. I ended at day 2 with 352,000. Like, it just went great for me. I just never looked back.
Yeah, the 350,000 was probably what, third biggest chip stack of like the 102 people advancing, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was number 1 for my flight. I was
right.
chip leader. For my flight, I was a chip leader.
Overall, there's like 102 people advanced, and you were like 3rd or something, right, with that stack?
No, in my flight I was number 1.
Right.
But when we came back for day 2, I was in 3rd.
Right.
I think I was like in 3rd or 4th place, one of those for day 2.
And a big stack. The average stack was around 140,000 or something going into day 2. You've got, 2 or 3 times the average stack. So, all right. So now you're going into day 2. You got a nice big healthy stack. I guess just quickly, kind of what's your mentality going into day 2? Are you sort of are you going in with any fixed mentality, or just see what happens? Are you going in with like saying, man, I just want to make the money and then we'll try to run it up? Or are you going in thinking, I'm in attack mode here, I'm going to punish people? What's kind of your game plan going into day 2?
Well, I happen to look at the I happen to look at the seats, like what seat I will be sitting in, and looked at players at my tables and looked at the positions and who the players were. I was like looking the players up on Hendon Mob to see if they had like any significant cashes or anything like that.
Yep.
So there was like Leo Fuzzy on the table.
Yep.
He was on my table, and I know he's a solid player. And there was like one other guy, I can't think of it. But all the rest of the players seemed like they were recreational. And I had like everyone double ×2. I had them doubled.
Right.
So I knew that I was going to be applying a lot of pressure, because I knew that, the money bubble, I think there was like maybe 20 guys that needed to go out or something. And there was like Brady Ross was on my table. He had like 24,000. And like there was like a few guys that had like less than 30,000. There was like a couple of people that had like 150,000, 160,000. And then everyone else was in the 50, 40,000, 70,000 range.
So you had really
my mentality was just
really good table draw.
Really good table draw.
Yeah.
Really good table draw. Like usually when I make day 2, I have like Robbie Waz, Matt Alexander, like all the pros, like like right to my immediate, to my immediate left.
All
so
the guys
I can't do anything.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you're going in with you're going in planning on being the aggressor, trying to chip up more.
Exactly. Yeah.
Against those tables with those stacks. Okay. So how did it go kind of early on, leading up to the bubble? How did it go? I know the bubble was only like an hour and a half into the tournament. So what did that first pre-bubble time look like for you? Were you able to chip up, or how'd it go?
Yeah, I got probably about 600K.
Wow.
Within that hour. Because I was like, people were just like, I could see the frustration in their face because I was just raising and re-raising every hand. I mean, I had decent hands, like if someone raised and I had like ace jack or ace queen, I'm 3-betting them. And if, I'm 3-betting with like king 10 suited, like ace jack, ace queen, basically pocket pair higher than eights. Like, I was applying a lot of pressure. And I took out like 2 people at once, like 2 of the short stacks. I was in a big blind with jack 6 suited. And they both shoved all in, and it was like only like 12,000 for me to call to knock out 2 players. So I called and hit a flush on the river. I was just running like God, man. Like I have to admit, I was running pretty good.
Sure. Okay. So good. See, you made it. You got to the bubble. You were able to chip up. Things kind of went your way. Sometimes they don't, but they did. So you got to the bubble, and now let's just kind of run through for the next before the final table, kind of the period from the bubble to the final table. Was it still just kind of easy, clear sailing? We don't need to get into a lot of specifics. Well, kind of generally, what was sort of your vibe? Were you confident? Were you starting to, think about the title? What was kind of going through your mind, and how did that generally go?
To be honest, I never thought about the money until we were about 6 handed. I'm just being honest. Like I just didn't think about the money. I knew we were in the money, but I didn't know like how much it was or anything because I never looked at it. I was just more focused on playing my game and trying to, observe what the players are doing and try to come up with a counter strategy to beat them. I was just focused on the game because a lot of times, like I've been in day 2 before and I'm like, oh, I got to make the money. I got to make the min cash. And it affects my game. I'm like folding 10s and, folding in spots that I shouldn't be folding or not being aggressive enough. And then I end up getting a min cash. And like, so this time I was just focused. One of my good friends is Carl Cardenito. He's a 3-time MSTT champion.
Yeah, I played with him
so he was already telling me. Yeah, he's a fearless player. And he just told me, he's like, man, be fearless, play your game. Don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the results. Just play your game and see where it goes. And that's all I did. I literally didn't think about the money till we were like 6-handed.
Right.
Then that's when I realized, okay, wow, I'm here, So,
Okay.
And then, going to the final table, I got hit. Like a couple of my buddies, I was down to 100K. Because like I ran in my buddy DJ Henderson. He like min raises on the cutoff, and I'm in the big blind with ace 10, and I just stoof on him. And I guess I didn't realize how much I shoved for. I think it was probably like 500K. And he snap called me with aces, And then another one of my buddies, he caught a flush on me he caught a boat when I hit the ace high flush. So that crippled me. So I was down to like 100K or something like that. And then we went on break and I came back.
Well, I think in any long tournament like this, you're going to have those spots where you get coolered or you make a mistake or whatever it is. I think the key is that, you're able to build enough chips during those, the pre-bubble phase and that sort of stuff where you can absorb those things. And I think that's a mistake a lot of recreational players do is they think, okay, I'm in good shape. But then they don't, they're not able to chip up. They don't have the kind of game where they're able to keep chipping up. And so then they end up, kind of coming back to the field. They have an average stack. One thing goes against them. They shove ace 10 into pocket aces.
Yeah.
Now they're out of the tournament. Whereas I think, the advantage that you had is you were, either because of your run good or because of how you were playing or whatever, you're able to chip up so that when those really horrible spots come or you get sucked out on, you're still in the tournament. And I think that sounds like something you did really well because you're never going to be able to avoid all of those things the entire tournament.
Exactly. It's just you have to be able to bounce back. Like you said, it's very important to have enough chips. So you have to really pay attention to stack size. Like I was never shoving against someone who had me covered. Like I was shoving against stacks that I had covered because I know that they can't bust me. And so that's very important to like pay attention to stack sizes, pay attention to, how often people are raising and what they're raising with that showdown. So yeah, that's very, very important.
Okay.
So that type of stuff I was thinking about.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you played a really confident, good, solid game. So, all right, so you get to the final table. You said you didn't really think about the money till the final 6. Just talk a little bit about your final table experiences. Was this the kind of the biggest final table that you're ever a part of with the most money up top, or is this something that you've experienced before?
Well, final table for the Love of Money tournament too.
Okay.
I think there was I'm back-to-back final tables right now.
Nice.
So, but I think it was only 31K up top at that for the Love of Money tournament.
Yeah,
and
but still, obviously,
so this will be my biggest final table. Yeah, the most money I've ever been close to was I was online playing in a $1 million guarantee on black chip poker, and there was like 1,261 players, and I went out 26th place, and it was like 100,000 up top.
Nice.
So that was like that would have been life changing for me.
Well, for sure. So this isn't.
But yeah, this was my biggest final table. Yeah,
it's a big deal, but it's not the first time you've experienced it, but it's still only the second or third time where you've kind of been close to this big money. So
right.
You're a very confident guy, but were there any butterflies at this point? Were you starting to think, man, I just can't make a big mistake, or were you just kind of, I'm just going to play my game, whatever happens, happens?
Well, I busted out Robbie Waz in 11th place.
Yep.
I got lucky. I'll tell the hand really briefly. I was big blind with ace deuce of diamonds, and I think the blinds were at this point were like 50,000, 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
And we were both the big chip leaders at the table. I had like probably 1.5 million. He had probably like 1.2 million or something like that. And he min raises with queen jack off on the cutoff. I flat the big blind. Flop comes queen 10. 3 or something like that with 2 diamonds.
Oh boy! Yeah.
I check
fireworks.
I got a nut flush draw.
Yeah, he's
so
got
he and he got top pair. He bets like 200K, and I just shove on him.
Yep.
Because my thought process was, well, if he has a queen, I still have outs. I have a diamond draw plus an ace draw plus an ace plus an overcard, or he could just fold if he doesn't have anything. So there's 2 ways I could win the hand. So I just shove all in. He does snap call, and I hit an ace on the turn, and he doesn't improve.
Yep.
So I came into the final table chip leader. And so I was pretty confident.
Yeah.
Yep. So I was trying to make a chop, though. I was trying to ask the guys when we were 10-handed, like, hey, do you guys all want to take 5,000 apiece and play for the rest? Because I only had $12 in my pocket at that point. I literally had $12 in my pocket.
Well, let me ask you about that. Because I know ultimately it did end in a 3-way chop, and I want to talk about that. But 10-handed. So you're a massive chip leader. You're kind of proposing it there. Was the thought just because, man, I made it this far? I just want to. Man, if I could lock up $5,000, I'd feel really, really good. Is that kind of the perspective?
That was the thought process. I was like, I at least want to go home with 5K. If I run bad, at least I made 5K. I would have been happy with that.
Right.
So that was my thought process. Was to lock up 5K.
Because 10th place was what? 10th place was probably like $1,000 or something.
I think it was like maybe 1,900.
Okay.
I think it was about 19. It was about 1,900.
Yep. Okay.
So it wasn't different, but still, 3,000 is 3,000. It's still, it's a decent amount of money.
Nope, it's definitely huge for 10-handed. And like you know, in poker, anything can happen. Okay, so no chop happens. You continue to move forward. At what point are you starting to think this could actually happen?
When we got down to about 6-handed, I started realizing that I was like, wow, I was running good. Like I was catching cards when I needed to catch cards. I was like being very aggressive and 3-betting people with like, everything, my whole range pretty much. Well, not my whole range, but, like ace highs and king highs and stuff like that. But only in late position and stuff like that. I was 3-betting the guy, and every time someone tried to raise on the button and I was in the small blind, if I had a blocker, an ace or a king blocker, I know it was harder for them to have it. So I just 3-bet them, and they folded pretty much every time, So I was just, I was running really good, and so I kind of started realizing like, wow, I have a shot at shipping this thing,
I like what you're saying too. I mean, you're saying, I was running really good, which means you're picking up decent hands, but you know that variance can come in many forms, and part of running good is that when you were 3-betting or when you were shoving, people were folding. People don't consider that part of the luck of the game, but that's a huge part of the luck of the game, that they were, raising with king jack instead of raising with pocket aces, which is certainly in their range, so that's part of the luck of the game is that when you're 3-betting as being effective and you're getting the folds when you have sort of those marginal hands, that's huge.
Yep. Yeah, it is. Because, you don't always pick up aces. I mean, I think I've probably seen aces maybe one time the entire tournament.
Yeah.
The whole 2 days. I mean,
which is
so you have to be able to, you have to make use of what you get,
No, that's it. Well, that's playing poker. I think that's playing poker. And so, and I like the idea of blockers. That's something we can explore sometime in the future, but that idea of saying, okay, here's their whole range. If I have an ace or a king, that narrows the part of the range that has aces or kings, and that's a big piece of understanding the game. All right, I want to fast forward a little bit. Let's just get you down to 3-handed here. And the decision to chop. Walk me through that deal. Now, who was left? You and Stevie was, and who was the third?
And Ty, some guy named Ty. I'm not sure his last name is.
Yep.
Yeah, but Ty was a really good player. Like, I respected his game. Like, he was a really good player. You know, I had played with him, you know, when we were like 3 tables left, and he was like 3-betting me a lot. You know what I'm saying? Floating me, and you know what I mean? Like, he was like to my left. So, you know, even though that I think I had like, I'm not sure how many chips I had, but I know I had way more than them. I think I had maybe 8 million or 10 million or something like that. I never really counted it. But the thing was, well, anything can happen, you know? I was thinking in my mind, like, okay, I could try to win the whole tournament for $39K. But right now, third place is only guaranteed $14K.
Yep.
So at first I tried to do an ICM chop. I'm like, hey, let's do, you know, actually Ty suggested the ICM chop. And so they came back and they were like, I get 32 and he would get 28. And then Waz would get 20, which I don't understand why he didn't do the deal. Waz was okay with that. He was like, no, you know, let's take 22,000 a piece and play for the rest. And I was thinking like, wow, you know, well, 8,000 is a lot. You know what I mean? I was like, what if they do double up on me and come back? Because I've been in that spot before, not this big of a spot, but I have been chip leader in smaller tournaments. And, you know, we're 3-handed and the guy comes back and they beat me. And, you know, or I turn the chop down. I hate being the guy to turn the chop down and then you lose. You know, you're like, damn, I could have got some more money, you know?
Sure.
So, and then another thing I was thinking about was, well, I was looking at like, I could still play for another 7,000 and the trophy. So why not guarantee myself the $8,000 and you still have another shot to win more money? Because I figured I was going to win anyways. So, and also we had already agreed, like there was only one person when we got to the final table and I wanted to take $5,000 a piece, they are all in agreement. Waz and Ty was in agreement. The guy who got 4th place was the only guy that didn't want to chop.
Okay.
So now that I'm chip leader, you know, I don't want to be the a-hole to be like, oh, now they got way more chips than you guys. I'm not going to chop. I'm not like that. You know what I mean? I'm not a greedy person. I was very satisfied with, I'm guaranteed $22,000. I only put in $10. I mean, what do I have to lose? You know? So I took the chop.
So what did you guys end up finally deciding on for the chop? 22 apiece and play for the rest?
Yeah. We did 22 apiece. We added 3 more K to second place. So second place was guaranteed 25K. And then first place was guaranteed 29K.
Okay, so you really
everyone that talks like, oh, it wasn't too smart to do that and this and that. But it's hard to say what you'll do when you're actually in the situation. You're looking at the numbers.
Here's the deal. I mean, everybody has an opinion on chops. Sometimes I chop, sometimes I don't, and I have a real specific reason usually for why I do it. But when you're in that situation at this point, there's only 3 people that can control the money, and that's the 3 of you left. You know what I mean? So it's your guys' money to split however you want. So you guys can do whatever you want. So I think that's cool. Right. You got to look at, you know, what's your situation with your chips, what's your confidence level, what's your own personal financial level, all of those things. So I think, I mean, for you to be in that spot and decide what you want to do with it, I think it's perfectly within your right, and who cares what people think. You know, if they were there, they could have chosen something else. So I think it's super cool.
Exactly.
You know, I played with both of those guys too. I think it's Ty Van Din, I think is his last name, and Stevie Waz. They're both at my table. They're both at my table the last few hours of day one. They're both extremely tough players. They really are tough players. Yeah. And so that's where you got to take that into account too and say, well, how do I feel about this whole 3-handed thing? But at the end of the day, you walked out of there, gross before tip and all that stuff. You got the 20. What'd you get? 29? Is that what you ended up with them?
29,000. 29,000. Yep.
Dude. Okay, so the broader picture, you know, we can talk specific hands, we can talk chop, we can talk all these things. At the end of the day, here's what happened, you know, in your life. You walked in on a Monday night, an hour late. You walked in an hour late to the free roll. You had $10 to give for an extra 5,000 chips. So you walked in. You ended up sitting down with 7 big blinds in a free roll, and you spun that up to get yourself a seat. Later that week, day one, and you ended up running that up to become the 3rd highest chip stack out of 102 people who advanced to day 2 out of a field of about 750 people. From that 102 people on Sunday, you ran that all the way up, and you won the frickin' title, you won the trophy, and you won $29,000. You started with $10 on Monday. $10 and a little bit of gas money. $10, a little bit of gas money.
A little bit of gas money.
Picking up your girlfriend from work, and you ended the week with $29,000 minus tip, taxes, all that kind of stuff. Wow! I mean, how great of a story is that? Like, if you could, you experienced it, so it's a little different. But if you were to step back from that, and you know, say it wasn't you, say it was one of your buddies, how amazing of a story would that look
Right.
to you?
That's really awesome. Like you said, it's almost like the Moneymaker event, for not as big as what he did, but for live, for $10. I mean, it's pretty cool, man. And it's like, I'm hoping to inspire other people out there, just because you don't have the bankroll or, you might not come from a lot of money. If you focus hard and you study and you just have confidence in yourself, believe in yourself, you can do the same thing. You can go from rags to riches. That's the great thing about poker.
Yeah, I mean, the Moneymaker effect it's a really good parallel, and I think part of this is strategy too. Like you look at the big tournament and you say, I can't pay $290 to pay the big tournament. Now, maybe you could, maybe you couldn't, but I'm saying for a lot of people that are out there saying, I'm never going to pay $290 to enter a tournament. Wait, there's another way.
Right.
They're actually doing this free roll on Monday night. I can pay for nothing or $10 and get in, and that's a path. Now, maybe it doesn't work out, but at least it's a path to put you in a situation to give yourself a chance. And so I would encourage people,
give you a shot.
If you don't know how to, if you don't want to play the big ones, play qualifiers, play free rolls, try to get your seat, look for creative ways to try to get yourself in there. And even if it doesn't, turn into $29,000 like it did for you, the experience you get from doing that. I mean, these people, I see these people play the free roll, they get the seats and they play day one, and they're playing against the best the best people in the state. Now, it doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
That experience is so valuable. If you're paying attention, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And to just learn from that's so valuable. So, man, I tell you what, dude, it was such a great story to watch you. And, you're so fun to have at the table, too. You're enjoying life. You're enjoying poker. And so, it's really easy to root for you. And so I just want to say, man, what a great run and congratulations on all the success, man.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it, man. It's been great, man. It's been really cool. Like, it's like a dream come true for me,
Yeah.
Like, and now I just, I'm trying to stay humble. Now I have more of a bankroll so I can play more games. I'm playing online a lot more. I was just playing a tournament last night. It's $50K guarantee every week on America's Card Room. $22. It was $12K up top. I went out like 190th place out of like 3,700 players, so I didn't get the win. I still made $60, but I'm going to be playing that every Sunday unless I'm in a big one.
Yeah, no, that's so good. That's so good. I think the key is just like everything, just keep good bankroll management. Don't get too big. Don't make it happen too fast. But you seem like you got a good head on your shoulders. You kind of know how to go, and you've got a good game, and you're continuing to learn the game. So, man, best wishes going forward. I'm going to probably cut us off there, but thanks for taking the time, man. This was super fun, and I'm super excited to have had the chance to kind of hear more about the journey to 29,000.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate you having me, man, and I'll be seeing you on the phone.
Yes, sir. Take care. Okay. Yep. Are you just seeing?
You want me to take over?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So I brought my sunglasses so I can put them on when you guys start critiquing this hand.
No.
It's an ace-king hand. We had 8 players left in a running aces tournament. They paid 6, usually pay the bubble. So basically the 8th person is the bubble in my thinking. The blinds were 5,000, 2,500 with a $500 ante. As you look around the table, I don't have everybody's stacks, but I was a second smallest stack. The guy that left me had 12K. I had 52K, and the big blind had 54K. Everybody else was comfortably ahead of the 3 of us. So I looked down to my hand. I got ace king offsuit. The under the gun folds. I bet 15,000. It folds around to the big blind calls. So I got a question mark betting 15,000 with my stack. Should I have went all in? 15,000. I was hoping maybe the 12,000 might come along, get him out of the game, get into the money. Your guys' thoughts?
Are you upset if you just take down the hand here? You just take the blinds and antes?
No, not terribly, because, we're looking at, 7,500 and 4,000, so 11,500.
Mm-hmm.
I have a history with ace king that's not very good. Last year I went out to the World Series, played for a week, had ace king 16 times. and never got help any of those 16 times. So I'm a little tentative with ace king.
Do you think also another question, Taylor's was a good one. I think also if you get re-raised here, are you ever folding ace king pre-flop?
No. In fact, I was kind of looking for a raise, and then I was going to go all in at that point in time.
Yeah. So I guess, my initial thought is, it's tricky because you are on sort of what you're considering the first bubble. You've got somebody with 12,000 with, two big blinds on your left. But, it's also such a good spot to pick up the blinds and antes. And, if you get called, you see all 5 cards. I guess my thought with whatever you have, 10 or 11 big blinds, is you probably just rip it in here. If you're never going to fold it pre-flop, and if you're happy just picking up the blinds and antes, I'd probably just maximize my fold equity, ship it all, and then if I do get called, at least I get to see all 5 cards. That's my initial thought. Even though it's on the bubble, even though you have sort of ICM implications, I still think it's just too good of a hand, too good of a spot with the second lowest chip stack to not just rip it in.
Yeah, you can't let ICM keep you from playing premium hands. This is still a very profitable hand for you to have. So, I mean, you're clearly never folding. And then it comes down to, if you bet, how much do you bet? And with 10 big blinds behind you, the opportunity to easily pick up 11,000, I feel like this is a shove just from the start.
Well, and
if you get called, you don't really care. Like, you're going to be in a decent spot.
Yeah, and if you do get called and double up, now you're not looking to eke into the money, but you're in contention for winning the tournament.
Right, and that's kind of what I was thinking as I went along. So that's pretty much what I thought the consensus would be, and that's why I brought this up to Steve, is because I played it like a rec, and I am a rec player.
Well, I will add, George, before you go on, I will say, to me, it's not horrible. I think it's a shove. I think it's the right play as a shove. I don't think it's horrible, but the one caveat before you kind of go the rest of the hand is, I think if I do just bet something less than all in and I get called, then I'm pretty much going to be flop and board dependent on if I continue or not. That's sort of my thought. I'm just putting in 15 thinking, well, if I don't get there, unless the conditions are really right, I probably just am giving up then if I don't hit. That's sort of my thought.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Definitely.
All right. So I'll move on a little bit. Now, the big blind must have been a beginning player, because he did not understand the one chip rule, and he did not understand the bounty chip was an all-in at the beginning of the tournament, because I sat next to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure what that, if he should have called or not called. I'm in early position. I've raised. I'm showing strength. The flop comes out queen, 8. And the big blind checks. But when he checks, there's a little bit of motion, like he's twitched to bet, and then he stopped. At least that's what I saw. I thought I saw. So he checked, and then I checked.
Did you read anything into that motion, or you just observed it, or did you actually think about something there?
Well, I thought a little bit that he might have something, but the problem is I didn't continue with that thought. So because he did check, I looked at his motion and I felt uncomfortable, so I checked back. Now there again, should I have checked back? Should I be making a small to medium bet to see where I'm at with a pocket pair on the board? What are you guys' thoughts there?
I guess my initial thought is if I play it the way you played at the 15K and it goes, he checks this might be one of those spots. I know I said, I might give up on a lot of boards. This might be one of those spots where I probably would really think about ripping it in here, just because if he just calls, what hand does he have that, and most of his range is not going to hit this flop. If he had just called me pre-flop, obviously queens hit, but if he's got ace jack, ace 10, ace 9, king jack, king 10, jack 10, all that kind of stuff. Even like pocket pairs, like 5s and 6s and 4s and that kind of stuff. If I shove here, I might get him off of that. And if I don't, I'm still probably drawing live to anything but a queen. So that's sort of my initial thought, is that maybe I shove this flop. Other guys?
I think a very sneaky move here of betting 10,000 is in order.
Oh, go on.
You're gonna get a lot of people to fold.
Right.
Think about it, the same situation. If you bet another 40K versus 10K, what hands would fold to the big bet but not to the small bet? I feel like you're going to get the big blind to play his hand face up. And if you bet small, he's either going to shove or fold. And if he does call, you're kind of in a weird spot, but you at least tried to get him to fold.
Right. I think if he calls, then I put the brakes on anyway. And I agree with that after thinking about the hand. That's what I believe I should have done, was to at least put out a small to medium bet, find out where I was. If he calls, put on the brakes. I've got ace high, I got a showdown value.
Because if you bet 15 right away, which if we want to get back to, I think 15 is too big of a sizing, but I don't know how you are personally sizing throughout the tournament. It may be consistent with your open raises, but on the flop or the turn, I think even a check is fine, and then firing out on the turn a small bet, kind of for the same reason that I said. You're trying to get them to fold. It looks fairly strong when you bet that small.
And then you just fold. If he calls, you give up, or if he shoves, you just fold?
Essentially, yeah. You still have that short stack covered if you make that small bet.
Right.
You still positioned with 30-ish thousand.
Yeah, you'd have like 26K behind or something. Yeah. You have 5 big blinds behind.
Yeah, you hit the blinds before that other opponent, but you do.
I would have had enough to get through, and he would have been just about out of chips when he went through the big blind, small blind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, Taylor. I think yeah, if you're willing to put in an additional 10K and then give up, as long as you're willing to do that, I guess, if you get called or if they shove on you.
Yeah. And if you do it on the turn, you kind of know what your outs are going to be if you do get called. If you get shoved on, it should be an easy fold for you because he has you beat if he shoves. Obviously, you're hoping for a fold. And if he calls, you're kind of in a weird spot, but you know that you're probably behind and you probably need an ace, a king, or a 10 to win.
Right.
So it seems kind of weird to have a pot-sized bet left and then bet out a fourth of the pot, but I think it could work out well here.
What do you other guys think? So on the flop, let's assume it's as played. We bet 15K, we get called. Flop comes queen, 8. We have 37K behind. The pot is 35,000 or something like that. We have bubble implications. What do you guys think?
I'm probably continuation bet.
Rob, what was that?
Yeah, I probably continuation bet. And like Taylor said, probably something like quarter pot.
Yeah, I was thinking like 12K continuation bet.
Okay.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. The only thing I did, like I said, get a little something out of his motion, and I'm not sure. It obviously didn't stick very well as I played the hand out. So
yeah. And another thing that you said too earlier, George, was that you've seen this guy make kind of like silly mistakes or unfamiliar with stuff. And in that case, like a small bet, he might not even like notice it's a small bet. He might just be like, 10,000, I just fold.
Right.
Type of stuff. So I think that gives it a little bit more merit to the small bet.
Sure.
My personal opinion, though.
No.
It's good.
Okay. So we'll keep moving on. Turn is the jack. And the big blind checks again. So I'm looking it all over and I'm going, well, he checked the second time. I don't think he's got a queen. And if he's got a jack, I got 4 10s and any ace or any king that I maybe win with. So I got 10 outs if he does have a jack. So I rip it in at that point. There again, I got a question mark by all these things I think I probably did wrong. But what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, what do you guys think?
I kind of made my opinion clear. I think it's either if you check the flop, either another check here or a small bet. I think any all in, we just let our opponents play perfectly against our given hand.
As much as you don't want to limp into the money, you do have a guy right next to you with 2 big blinds. And you can survive the blinds going through you, but he's going to be all in. And you have a chance to get in the money. Like you said, you're on the bubble.
Right.
You know, there's two things you think about on the bubble. You either want to go, be very aggressive and try to push people off of pots and win those blinds and antes because everybody's trying to get in the money, or you stay back yourself and don't get too involved until the bubble bursts. So you have 2 moves there, depending on how much you want to just cash compared to how much you want to go for the gold, so to speak.
Right, and that's kind of what I thought at the all-in. I'm kind of going for the gold. I don't want to min cash. I want to get some chips. And my timing issues were pretty bad, I think. the all-in.
If that was your thought pattern, then I would have just gone all in pre-flop.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I said, I got a history with ace king, so I'm a little timid. Ace king.
Yeah, but if you flip a coin 10 times in a row and it comes up heads,
yep.
Guess what? It's still 50-50 that it's going to come up tails the next time.
I'm not sure I believe that 35.
I find a lot of people that have an issue with like ace king hands and pocket jacks hands is they end up usually playing them too timid. They don't play them as strong as strong a hand they are. They end up playing them weak, and that's why they lose with them more often than they probably should. And so this ace king with 10 big blinds is a almost automatic shove, even though you're on the bubble. You just want to pick up. He's going to fold queen jack. He would have just folded that preflop, and you would have had 60,000, and pretty much guaranteed being in the money.
Right.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I think by the time you get to the turn, I don't know. It doesn't really matter what you do by then because you've already committed half your stack, or so most of it anyway. I think Taylor said it good. I mean, if you're thinking that deeply, not a lot of people think as deep as Taylor does about these situations.
It's true.
And
Right.
I'd be looking at it like I'm in no man's land. I wouldn't know what to do.
I'm blushing, Rob. Thanks.
No, it's true though. I mean, you think it at a different level than a lot of people think. For all the different options that are available to you, you go into each one of them and look at how they can impact what you're going to do. And I'm looking at it like pre-flop, I go all in, and by now I would not know what to do. I'd be in no man's land.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm putting kind of thoughts into how George was thinking about it, but I feel like I've been in this situation before. I felt like I'm in no man's land on the turn, and I shoved because that's just my natural instinct of how can I get my opponent to fold? I just need to shove.
Yeah,
and I think
exactly.
I think that's a big problem, and I think this is a really good hand to kind of point that out. Like, hey, if we get in these situations where we're not sure what we are going to do, we can't just like make a rash decision and go all in thinking that's the best decision.
It simplifies it because it's all or nothing and you're done.
Yeah. You don't have to think about it anymore, right? No. Like you shove all in, your decisions are done, but that doesn't mean it was the right decision because it took away decisions from you. Like, I've made this mistake thousands of times and I keep trying to smack my hand saying, don't do it.
Well, I guess.
And I think one of the things you said, Taylor, too, is just good. And I think that's I'm learning a lot through this conversation. I think one of the things you said was, by shoving, you are forcing your opponent to play optimally. And that's clearly what is happening there. It's pretty much a queen they call, and everything else that you're ahead of, they fold. So if they're ahead of you, they call, and if they're behind you, they fold, which obviously is not, the situations that we want to be in. We want them to call us with worse hands, and we want them to fold better hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also thinking that possibly by going all in, I slow played a queen myself, not realizing, as it shows down on the bottom, that he's holding the queen and a jack for a full boat.
But if you did have a queen,
Would you have
and
shoved?
this is kind of where I was going with like my small bet thing. Like if you have a queen here, do you maybe just bet small?
Right.
And therefore, when you bet small with just your ace high, it could give the perception that you were trying to get value out of a queen as well.
Yep. And that's why I put question marks by each one of those. I felt like I misplayed all three of my streets there.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-flop, on the flop, I should have bet, went all in. I had 30% of my stack in anyway. That technically they tell you to go all in if you got 30% of your stack in. Then I checked when I should have bet something to find out where I was in my mind. The old bet to see where you're at, see where you stand a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully if he doesn't have a queen, yes, he's going to most likely fold. And then, like you said, I get a little nervous and I want to get to the end here. And I'm thinking, how am I going to make him fold? So I go all in, assuming he doesn't have to have a queen after 2 checks, because I'm going to bet on the second. After 1 check, I'm going to bet. I'm not going to wait till the river to bet. So he slow played it well, and he tricked me right out of all my chips.
So if you guys are kind of sort of taking the line here where we bet pre-flop and then we want to do like this 10K bet to kind of see where we're at. Do you guys, I mean, we're in position here. Do you guys like that bet on the flop more or on the turn more? Let's say we're going to do that one time. Our line is that we're going to, take a stab at this thing, but we're not going to commit all of our chips. We're going to bet with the intention of folding if we're raised upon. Do you guys like doing that on the check where, it's right away, it's kind of an immediate C-bet. They've shown weakness one time. Or do you like it more on a delayed style where they've now checked twice, but we've risked them hitting that second, that turn card?
For me, since you have ace king, I probably like it better on the flop because you're in essence buying your way to the river if they happen to call you. They're very likely to check the turn. You can check behind. You have ace king, and you have a shot of still hitting on the river for the best hand as well. So that's probably how I would lean.
Because you're in position.
Right.
Ace king could actually win at showdown too.
Right.
Well, that's where I was thinking if you decided to check the flop, which I wouldn't have done either, but as played, check the flop, I probably at that point choose to check the turn as well.
Yeah.
And then with the intention of calling a small bet on the river to induce a bluff.
Right.
George has gone to the shades, I see.
I put my shades on now. I figured there were, pretty much what I figured. I butchered the hand fairly well, and I just wanted to get everybody's opinion and to show that we are a rec group. We're not professional.
For sure. No, that's it.
No, you have to be able to identify these spots. Because if you just keep playing this and see this hand and go, oh, man, I got unlucky. He had queen jack. Like, you're not going to improve.
Right.
Like,
hey guys, I'm hearing a squeaking. If you guys can mute when you're not talking, I'm not sure what that squeaking is coming from.
That'd
be
me.
awesome.
I'm sorry. My dog is downstairs.
No, if it's doing it while you're talking, that's fine. Just when you're not talking. Go ahead. Sorry, finish your thought, Taylor. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so I mean, like if you go through this hand and go, oh man, I just got unlucky. I had ace king and then he slow played queen jack and just got my whole stack. That's not the right way of thinking of it. Like you go through this and you think about the hand and say, what is the best decision?
Right.
Okay, it's probably just shove pre-flop. Okay, say I don't just shove pre-flop. Now what do I do? What's my plan on these flops, turns, and rivers? And kind of approach it that way. I feel like you're just going to be continuously improving in something that seems like a marginal or small spot, just to know what your plan is going to be and like having thought through it before. So when you're in a different situation, you kind of can recall those thoughts. I think it's really important to go through stuff like this for that reason.
Yeah, that's well said. Well, George, anything else to add on that, or anybody else want to chime in with their thoughts on that hand or that situation?
I got something real quick. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Andy.
So back to your original question, when we were talking about making that small bet, isn't someone more likely to float you on the turn. I mean, on the flop if you make that bet, but if you wait and make that bet on the turn, that's going to probably give you more of the results that you're looking for. That's what I was thinking. Where to make that small feeler bet, I think better on the turn, because on the flop sometimes it seems more likely that people are going to float that. Thoughts?
I think people float more often when they're in position. You know, the out of position float is a little bit iffy, because you still have to, if you float out of position on the flop, you're going to have to float again on the turn, because you can't bet out if somebody bets into you. So, I think if the positions were reversed, I would agree with you.
I think the stack sizes are such too. It's pretty hard to just float here. I mean, I don't disagree with kind of what you're saying. Like, you can float when you're deeper. It's pretty hard to float now when everybody's down to that 10 big blinds or so. I think for me, the one, I think John made a great point as far as, boy, if you can fire the flop and then you get to their, if they have a big hand, they're going to check to you on the turn as well. Then you can check back and you can see all 5 cards. I like that. I think the advantage of waiting to the turn to fire is that now they've potentially shown weakness twice. And I think maybe that was what George was saying, is he wouldn't check a queen there twice. And I think a lot of players, I'd say most players, don't have the patience to check a queen twice there, especially if they don't have queen jack. If they've got queen 9 or something like that, or king queen, and now the jack comes, it's starting to get a little bit scary, and so most people would fire that turn. So I think the advantage of waiting to fire the turn is that you get to see them show weakness twice. So maybe their pocket sevens eventually they're just going to give up on.
That was my thought.
Yeah, but then they hit their jack. I mean, that's the thing. So then again, they're going to check, and because the stacks aren't that deep, it's pretty much they're only going to get one street of value anyway. So I can see why they checked again. But if they had queen 10, they might have bet that turn.
So I got a question. What if you're betting the flop, then you're saying you get to the river? Wouldn't that be the same if you waited till the turn? Wouldn't you get a river card there too for free, for the same price? I mean,
I think John's making the point that if you continuation bet the flop, you're more likely to get a check on the turn. Whereas if you check on the flop, there is a chance that your opponent's going to lead out into you on the turn. And then you have to call, you lose your fold equity.
Okay.
You're saying you keep your fold equity, plus you increase your odds of kind of going check on the turn, allowing you to see all 5 board cards.
So you're inviting an aggressive move on the turn by checking. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I know if I were in the big blinds position and George had checked me on the flop, particularly since it's a paired board, I would have been, regardless of my cards. I mean, obviously having a full house changes things. But assuming I missed, I'd be very, very tempted to lead out on the turn, because the stack sizes cannot afford to take much pressure. And it just is so much pressure there that I would have almost always, I think, depending upon my read on the player, if I don't sense strength, I would have let out that turn from the big blind almost 100% of the time.
Okay. Now, do you think it's more likely they see your c-bet on the flop as just that, a continuation bet, standard that a lot of people make, whether you hit it or not, and they kind of disregard it and are going to call that first one anyway?
If the stack sizes were different, yeah, but these stack sizes are so shallow that they can't afford
to.
I mean, it's basically, you could almost say, hey, I'm going to bluff at this right now, and they still can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if they didn't hit it either, you could still, you're ahead probably.
Right.
I mean, you're ahead of Queen Jack if it's a different flop that nobody hit. Yeah, good point.
And that's what John was saying. He was talking about, Ace King could be good at showdown.
Yeah.
If you can get there cheap enough.
Yeah.
And a c-bet on the flop could get you to the showdown free.
Okay.
Yep. All right, good stuff. Any other questions? Any other comments? All right, good stuff, George. Thanks for sharing that. I know the last 2 years of doing this podcast, all I do is share hands that I butcher. And I'm not saying you butchered it, but I think it's a huge opportunity to grow our game when we're transparent about how we played things. I think that's how we get better. I actually just was interviewing Emanuel Evegen. I don't know if you know that name at all, but he won the free roll last week. Ended up going and playing the Pot of Gold tournament and won that tournament too for $29,000. So I'm going to include his interview on this episode. But that was one of the things that he talked about too, is just having people that he was willing to just talk about hands with, share hands, be transparent, and just say, hey, here's what I did. Help me figure out how to play it better. And so I appreciate you doing that, because I know it's not easy to always say, hey, guys, here's how I played. And everybody disagree with me. I know that's not easy, so I appreciate you doing that.
No, I definitely realized I made a few mistakes, and I just wanted to confirm them. And like you said, think about it for the next time.
Yeah, and what I love about it is it's not just, I think, okay, yeah, you should have shot pre-flop or whatever, but then we get down to that, the flop and the turn, and having, I think, Taylor and others say, well, hey, it's not just a give up or a shove. There's a third narrative here, and I think that's always good to think about. What are all of my options, not just what are the most obvious two. So I think that for me, that was a key takeaway in that deal. So let's talk a little bit about pocket tens. And this was starting with a conversation with Stacey. So I don't know if you want to talk about your hand specifically, Stacey, or not, or if we just want to kind of go into this general. I thought we could talk about pocket tens and kind of the difference playing them based on where we are in the tournament, where we are with stack sizes, even like the same situation. Like I was saying, okay, let's say if there's like an earlier middle position open and a call, and then we're in the cutoff with pocket tens. How does that look, early in a tournament when we all have like 100 big blinds? How does that look as we're leading up to the bubble? And how does that look, once the bubble's broken and we're sort of in that consolidation phase? That's kind of was my thinking on. We could break that down and just think about how we should be thinking about pocket tens differently based on stage of tournament. Stacey, I don't know, unless you want to talk specifically about your situation at all?
I hadn't prepared to do it. So if you wanted to break the email out, I'd be okay with that. But I hadn't thought about it right now, so I don't have all the figures in my head and that.
Okay.
So,
well, yeah, I don't have a super handy. We'll keep this one generic, and then if you want to, I'll look for it as we're kind of chatting about this one. See if I can find it.
If you feel it would help, that's fine. I don't have a problem.
Okay.
Showing how I butchered it, but
I don't know if you did or not. It's just these are just tricky spots, right? Well, let's just talk about this, and let's talk about.
Yeah.
Maybe all the specifics don't matter as much as just the concept. So let's first take early in a tournament. Let's say we have 100 big blinds. Just for sake of argument, blinds are 50, 100. Everybody's got 10,000 chips. What are the considerations on how we play pocket tens? We've got say an early to middle position open. So maybe under the gun +2, somewhere in there. They open, and then there's a call behind them, and then we're in the cutoff. So we're one away from the button. We're late position. And we have pocket tens. Early in a tournament, 100 big blinds. What are our thoughts on that deal?
Well, I would. Again, if you've already got action in front of you, I would be set mining. I would just be calling. I don't think I would raise at that point in time.
I've been widening my 3-betting range a lot, and that moved tens into a value 3-bet for me. So this is a spot where I'm going to put on the squeeze and most likely 3-bet our opponent and put the pressure on. A lot of it would be player dependent, depending on that original open and then also the caller. If I've seen them play quite a bit in the day, their player types might move me one way or the other. But in general, I'm going to be leaning towards a 3-bet here.
And are you doing that hoping for 2 folds, Taylor?
I think I'm all right with almost every option. The majority of it is to keep the blinds out of the way and keep it three-handed. Plus, no one behind me is going to call, most likely. So I'm going to be in position versus one or two opponents if I do get a call. If I get a fold, I'm totally fine with that too. I'm probably going to be picking up, 7-ish big blinds with that. If not, I'm going to be playing 20 big blind pot with, pocket 10's pretty good hand to have. Pretty easy to play on the flop too. We can kind of know where we're at once the flop comes out. So in general, I just think it's a pretty decent spot.
And I missed the first part of your comment there, Taylor, as I was searching for that email. You talked about changing your 3-betting ranges a little bit, or because part of it for me is I want to be able to 3-bet aces, so you want to be able to 3-bet enough stuff where it's not super obvious what you have. Or what were you saying there about your 3-betting?
Yeah, I said I'm trying to open up my 3-betting range, and this would be part of my 3-bet value range.
Yep. Okay.
So obviously I'm going to be having some bluffs in there too, but it's not going to be straight linear. So I'm going to be sort of cutting it off with maybe 10s being the bottom of that range. And then, the other cards like, Jack 9s, Jack 8s, Queen 10s, whatever it may be, in terms of my 3-bet bluffing range.
Yep. Okay.
And you said it was player dependent. Now, what if you've got that guy with the John Deere hat that open raised? You know that he's playing about a 5% range. Now what do you do?
If that's the person who open range, probably call. If that's the person that called the original raise, probably still 3-betting.
Yep.
It seems like a minor difference, but when he just calls the original raise, I think we take off the top part of his range.
Right.
Which makes him
3-bet.
Makes him less scary. You
Yep.
can look at him and go, okay, you've got your ace kings, ace queens, king queen, maybe some 9s, 8s, 7s, etc., which we're doing great against with pocket 10s. But if that would be the open raise, he still has all his aces, kings, queens, jacks in his range, which makes it a little bit more scary.
I do kind of like the 3-bet, even if it is John Deere opening. And the reason is I'm going to find out right away if they've got aces or kings. So I know that going in, and a lot of times, if they have queens, jacks, or ace king, they're just going to be calling. And in which case, I feel like in position I can outplay them because, I think they're going to just kind of tell you. Usually, if there's an ace or a king on the flop and they check, you can bet and they're going to fold their queens. If it's a 8 high board or jack high board or something, and they check and you bet, they're going to fold their ace king. It just feels like, I don't mind the 3-bet there just because I find out right away because they're going to 4-bet shove their aces. But I'm open to being corrected on that. That's just sort of my thought is it really helps me narrow their range, immensely if I do 3-bet them, even a kind of a min 3-bet.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that because even John Deere, he's just calling with his ace kings, ace queens. He's not re-raising, and so you're ahead of where he's at. So I agree with 3-betting or just flatting there, but either one. But more, I lean towards 3-betting on my hands.
So, Steve, when you say you're going to find out a lot about his range, do you think a lot of his range is going to be 4-betting there, and or a lot of it is going to be folding?
I think a fair amount of I think not a fair amount of 4-betting, but I think a fair amount will fold. Maybe not a lot if we're just depending on our bet sizing there, really, on how much that's going to fold. But I think he's just going to play it so straightforward that I do think aces or kings he's probably going to 4-bet, even the most John Deere of John Deere folks. So I like to get rid of those hands just because if he's playing queens and below, I just feel like he's going to play it pretty straight up. If an ace or king's on the flop, I'm going to know if he has ace king. And if, ace king's on the flop, I'm going to know if he has pocket queens. But yeah, but I'm open to hearing kind of your thoughts on that. But that is my thing. I don't think it's gonna. I think it's just taking out the very top of his range. I want to know if I'm up against aces or kings here right away before I face an 8 high flop and have to figure out what to do.
Well, the only comment I would have is last week we had a little bit of this discussion. I don't remember who brought it up, but one of the students of Chris Fox Wallace was told that early in the tournaments, when the blinds are small, that you want to play your 9s, 10s, maybe jacks, and set mine with them rather than pushing. So that's why I did that in the last tournament last night. And it worked out well. I hit a set. In fact, I hit a full bowl of 10s and took a lot of chips by set mining.
Yeah, I think that's where Taylor landed when he said he would call in that spot, because now your 10s become a set mining opportunity. I think that was Nels that was talking about that, talking about Heidi Rogenkamp, who was a student of Chris's. That's what she was telling him about. And yeah, I agree, George. I think at that point in time, it's a set mining opportunity. If you know the guy is opening wide, yeah, you can 3-bet with the 10s and make a lot of profit there. But if you know he's a very narrow opening range, then what you want to do is set mine at that point in time, and you can get away from it real quick if it ace, king, or queen flop.
But on the other hand, if you 3-bet, you don't necessarily have to get away from the bigger flops, because you've represented a pretty big hand as well. And
well,
again,
that's assuming he didn't 4-bet you. And if he just called you and an ace or a king come out, you still don't know where you're at. You're just totally in no man's land. You have no clue where you're at. So you talk about ace king being trouble cards for him. It's also a trouble card for you in the cases where he just calls.
but if you got position, you get a little info right there, right?
Yeah. Do you give up if, say, you 3-bet in this situation, you've got pocket 10s and then an ace or a king, let's say just one comes out on the flop. Are you slowing down or giving up here?
What do they do? Because you got position. What do they do?
You got position, they check to you.
No,
You just heads up.
I don't. I think you continue representing the big hand that you represented ahead of time.
Right? So in that case, is an ace or a king not that bad for us? I mean, it'll help us figure out where we're at, but it allows us to bluff with pocket 10s then.
Right. But if you don't 3-bet, now what are you representing? I mean,
Yeah.
it's still in your range,
Mhm.
an ace or a king, but it's less. I don't know.
I think for what we're calling.
If you don't 3-bet an ace or king comes and you're going against two players, one of them hit it. I don't think you want to try to bluff at this pot now they checked it to you. One of them might even have a set. So, yeah. On the 3-bet one where there's only one ace or one king out there, yeah, we can bluff at it. We can represent it. The biggest question to me is how much? How much of the pot are you betting? Are you betting a third? You betting half? You betting 60%? It depends on what you think the guy's going to call and what he won't call and what he's going to represent.
True enough.
Yeah, and I know I've talked about this times before, but I think it's a great spot to continuation bet to a small percent of the pot. I've always talked about I like to be in the 35 to 40% range of the pot. And I think this would be a perfect spot for that, where it's 3-bet. Your opponent checks to you on an either ace or king high board. You're going to be folding a lot if they've totally missed that card. And if they haven't missed that card, you're going to find out with a call. So you don't really need to risk additional chips. You can size down and still accomplish the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you this. So we're still in early position, and I was kind of being vague about the positions. How much do you guys pay attention to, like if there's an open and a call before us and we have our pocket 10s, how much do you pay attention to if that initial open was under the gun versus middle position? Are you guys actively paying attention to that? Are you sort of thinking, well, do these players even pay attention to it either? Like, how does that change your thinking if it's under the gun player opens and the under the gun +1 player calls and then it folds around to you in the cutoff versus middle position opens, hijack calls, and then you're in the cutoff? How much do you guys take that into consideration?
I put a lot of emphasis on their positioning. If they're under the gun or under the gun +1, I'm thinking there's somewhat decent strength, and I'm going to be a lot more conservative. I'm going to set mine, or I'm just going to call, most likely. That's why I brought that up originally.
Okay. So if that was later position, you might be more. You may still set mine. You may still choose to do that, but you'd be more prone to 3-bet if those initial raise bets were coming from later position.
Well, last night I had 9s and I had 4 limpers, and I tried to put the squeeze on, and it went fold, 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 all in.
The third limper shoved on you?
The fourth limper shoved on.
Okay, yikes.
And so he had 25,000, I had 28,000, so I folded my 9s.
You were ahead, by the way.
Yeah, I was ahead. He had 2 overs. But it was 50-50, and that would have been basically my tournament life.
Yep. How about the rest of you guys? How much are you paying attention to the position of the raise call in front of you?
A ton.
I think you pay attention to it, but does it change what your play is with your 10s on the cutoff? I mean,
that's the question.
I mean, I think you're paying attention to it, but my question is, does that change something? I still think either way, you're still going to probably want a 3-bet there, even if the guy opens under the gun. Aren't you still better off 3-betting those 10s than to just call? I guess.
I don't know. I mean, I know my own ranges by position, and I'd be much more likely to flat my under the gun open and 3-bet my middle to late position open based on the ranges that I play.
Unless I've been shown differently, my decision to 3-bet differs greatly based off of the position of my opponents. To say it another way, if the original raiser's under the gun and the caller's under the gun +1, I'm going to give that a lot of value unless the opponents have shown me differently, meaning I've seen them open from the under the gun and have a marginal hand. If I haven't seen that, I'm going to take the cautious route and not 3-bet here, just because the majority of thinking opponents should have a really tight range from under the gun.
So then you're, in essence, calling and potentially just set mining at that point, Taylor?
Correct. Yep. Yeah. If it's under the gun open, under the gun +1 call, and I haven't seen them do anything, or I haven't seen them do anything to change my opinion, it's 100% a call for me. But if you move them even more around the table and put them as like hijack and cutoff, and then I'm on the button, yeah, I'm going to be 3-betting almost 100% of the time, even if it is John Deere hat saying he's got a premium hand.
And so does it matter if it goes from 10s to jacks? Does that change things significantly in terms of if it's an early position opener, or is it still the same same type of hand?
We kind of had this discussion last week when we were talking about we opened from the cutoff and the big blind 3-bet us, and then we were kind of talking about where's that cutoff point of where do you call, where do you 4-bet. This is kind of a similar spot, at least in my mind, where jacks might be a call. That one might be a little bit more player dependent, and then queens would almost always be a 3-bet. In the exact instance of under the gun open, under the gun +1 call. It might be a 50-50 type of thing with jacks for me personally.
And I kind of look at it as almost a situation that's almost similar to, do you c-bet certain flops when you have some equity in a hand? Like, when you flop middle pair, when you flop, a decent draw, that you want to see another card, you have a good amount of equity, and it'd be a shame to get check raised off of it. You know what I mean? To me, this is kind of a similar spot. Like if there's a bet and a call in front of me and I pocket 10s, if I 3-bet there, how much do I hate getting 4-bet off of that thing? You know what I mean? And what's the likelihood that I'm going to get 4-bet? And I think the likelihood of getting 4-bet off of my 10s or jacks is much higher if it's an under the gun raiser than it is if it's a middle position to late position raiser. So if I think I'm only going to get 4-bet if they have queens or better or ace king, well, that's a much bigger part of that under the gun range than it is of like the middle position range. meaning there's a higher probability that it's one of those hands that they have, so I'm going to get raised off my tens or jacks, and I think that's a shame. I don't want to get raised off my tens or jacks. If I do, I do, but I don't want that to be a high frequency sort of event. That's why if it's an under the gun raiser, I'm more susceptible to just call behind. And you mentioned, Andy, too, that you're pretty much just set mining at that point. And I'd be a little bit careful there because you are set mining. Obviously, that's the ideal, but you still have a fair amount of equity in that hand, even if one overcomes. I think a lot of us are way too quick to give up on that sort of thing if we don't hit a set. But if you got tens or jacks and it's a 9-high flop, or if you have tens or jacks facing an under the gun raise and it's a queen high flop, there's a really good chance that you're still good. You might not always be, but you still might have the best hand. And that's when it gets really dicey and tricky for me on that when you don't flop a set. But I think, you might don't be too afraid to, see a turn card on that either.
And to add to what you were saying, Steve, you're talking about the probability of being 4-bet. Another thing to think about is the probability that our opponent folds.
Right.
When they're under the gun, it's less likely that they're going to be folding if they're opening with a smarter under the gun opening range. Whereas if they're in later position and you have tens, you're kind of hoping to get folds from hands like queen jack, king queen, those types of hands that have equity against you, but still they fear a lot of other hands. And when you 3-bet, you can get them to fold thinking that they've been like they're pipped, like they're king queen versus ace king or ace queen. So you get a lot more folds the later position the open is. And then when you're under the gun, those king jack, queen jacks are less likely to open. So you're going to see less folds from the hands that you're hoping to get folds from.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it. Let's say, somebody under the gun is opening whatever, 8% of the hands. They're probably never going to fold to a normal 3-bet. It's either going to be a 4-bet or it's going to be a call. So yeah, your fold equity is very small in that spot unless there's some other dynamic in play versus somebody who in later position is opening 20 to 25% of hands. They're still only going to 4-bet you at that top range, and they're going to call you with some range. But yeah, then there's a nice chunk of hands that are just going to fold to your 3-bet. I think that's a great point, Taylor. You're looking at the whole range. How much of that range can you get to fold? And then you can obviously, once you 3-bet, you can represent a lot of different things after the flop.
Now at the $30 and $50 tournaments, in the 5,100 blind level range, do you notice a big difference in the under the gun raises versus? I just haven't seen a big difference. I see people with two face cards, any two face cards, 9, 10. It feels like they like the cards. They're gonna play it there. Do you see that as different? I think I see it as the tournaments get up to 150 or higher. But do you see it in a 30 and I'm just missing it, or what do you think?
To me, there's maybe I'd say 20 to 30% of the players that there is a difference. I would say that there's certain players where I know that they're betting, their ranges are different by position. But yeah, I think that's a good point. A lot of the players are just playing the two cards. It doesn't matter if they're small blind, big blind, under the gun, button. If they like their hand, they're going to like their hand. I don't know what other people think about that.
Yeah, again, it's player dependent. You have to, what have you seen them do in the past? If it's early on in a tournament, you don't really know. You have to go by how is the general field of players playing in that spot. And you kind of just base your decisions based on how the general poker player at that level is going to play. Until you've seen a few hands and seen them show down a few hands and try to understand where their head's at.
Right.
But yeah, early on like that, I would think, to Stacey's point, that might be a better spot to even 3-bet an early position raiser early on in a $30 or $50 tournament to an unknown player. Because to your point, they're gonna be opening a lot wider than a thinking player.
Yeah, you're betting more you're 3-betting for value more against a wider range.
Right.
Yeah, you actually you want them to call you with their king 10, ace 9.
Yep.
Garbage.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Stacey? Then does that change things for you? Or are you just saying maybe it's less about paying attention to position in those cases?
Well, just as you guys were talking there, I was thinking about this past weekend where I played, the $30 tournament, and I was just like, no, I didn't notice a difference. People were playing 6-7. If it was suited, they were gonna open an open raise, or if some of them weren't raisers, they were just limpers, and they were gonna limp it. It just didn't feel like they were putting a lot of thought into, and so to change a lot of my strategy at that point didn't seem necessarily wise. Whereas after the second break, now all of a sudden players that were left, they started noticing a difference where people were a lot tighter. We were only having 2, maybe 3 to a flop. And I started noticing a bigger difference at that point compared to the beginning. I was just wondering if maybe I was missing it at the beginning of tournaments and other people see it and I just don't.
Yeah.
So is it because the general public there is just really, really loose all the time? And then by the time you get to the middle, those people that are really, really loose all the time are not there anymore? Or is it their stacks are getting shorter, and so now they're playing a little tighter because they're more concerned about losing their stack? So, what is that dynamic?
I see a difference even at the 306 level. It usually starts to tighten up a little bit, and it gets a little bit more like real poker. That's my thought. I don't know how other people feel there.
Is that because they're getting low on chips, or is that because the people that were wild and crazy at the beginning are gone?
No, even though my table might be still the same. It just
okay.
Percentage of stacks, the number of big blinds they have is down, and they start to feel it. That's my thought.
And I think too, some of the less experienced players. I know for me it was like this, and I think even here at the table, you might bet 3 times the blind. At the beginning, it's 150, then it's 300, and they're like, "Oh, I can play for that."
Yeah.
And then the blinds are 300, 600. You bet 1,800.
Yeah.
They're like, 1,800. Oh my god! Why so much? They're not really tracking the fact that it's a multiple of blind. They're just seeing as a total chip count. So I think maybe there's some of that going on too. We're like 2,000. What are you, crazy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they'll say it out loud to you.
They'll tell you, that's crazy. Or they'll say, 600 when the blinds are 50, 100. Somebody will go 6X. And they're like, 600? Oh, I can call for that. They're not really putting together that, these are there's actually some logic behind the multiple of blind thing.
Right.
So what I'm hearing a little bit is, early in the tournament, one of the key indicators is, where are those raises coming from, or where are those bets coming from, as an indicator of whether we're going to call or 3-bet behind. Are there other key determinations that might change your action from a 3-bet to a call when the average stack is 100 big blinds deep?
I think if you're in the small blind or the big blind, what are your thoughts there? Because I kind of think in that situation, you don't want to play from out of position. So I think a call is less profitable from that position. And maybe at that point, that's where you really want to 3-bet with those hands like pocket 10s. And hopefully get calls or get folds. Obviously, you don't want to get 4-bet. If you get 4-bet, you're going to get the heck out of there because you're out of position anyway. So let's get rid of the hand right now. But to me, I think you got some fold equity because you're doing that from the blinds. And so to me, I don't like calling out of the blinds in that situation against 2 players. You got a opener and a caller, and then calling behind in the big blind. If there was just one opener, I might call in the big blind, but I wouldn't play the small blind without 3-betting it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, my thought is I would look at, where are the raises coming from there too. Like if it's under the gun, if it's early position again, I might give that more weight. I might be more prone to play it like I would pocket 4s and just set mine and fold if I don't get there. If it's a late position opener, then their range is going to be wider. And then I really do like a 3-bet, and I'd probably make it pretty hefty as well. But open to other thoughts on that, because that's those middle pairs in the blinds can be a place of a lot of anxiety for me.
Rob, I think we might have a fun discussion here. So you said you would either 3-bet or fold from the small blind?
Yeah.
Would you do that with 9s, 8s, 7s, 6s, 5s, 4s?
Early in the tournament, when we got 100 big blinds, I might try to set mine. But normally, in the small blind, I play very, very tight.
Mm-hmm. I fully get that. And I'm trying to play tighter from the small blind too. But I think pocket pairs are an excellent hand to play from the small blind, and that's always been my philosophy. So you're kind of throwing me off here when you say you'd either 3-bet or fold. And I'll give my thoughts behind it, and I'm interested to see if you agree or disagree. But from the small blind, if we have an open, and regardless of how many colors are before us on the button, if we call, we give the big blind the right price to call almost every single time, which increases our set mining odds. I just love how that all works out, that if we've got, deuces, 6s, 8s, 9s, whatever it is, like if we just call from the small blind, we're increasing our odds by calling, by getting the big blind to also call with us. If the big blind 3-bets, we're kind of in an awkward spot, but typically we're going to have everyone else in the hand help decide what we should be doing by the time it gets back to us. And then likewise, after all the pre-flop action happens and we're on the flop, in a multi-way pot, we almost always know exactly where we're at with those pocket pair hands. We've either hit a set and we know we're great, or we've completely whiffed and know that we're behind. So I don't really care that much that we're out of position here when we've got a pocket pair on the small blind. That's how I've always viewed it. I don't know if you're thinking about some other factors that make you decide to 3-bet or fold, but
I think it's probably the point in the tournament and your stack size. Obviously, if we're talking early in a tournament, 100 big blinds, yeah, your opportunity to set mine, as long as you can get in for less than 10% of your stack, your opportunity to set mine is worth the call.
Mm-hmm.
I think as you get deeper into the tournament, then you might want to start thinking about it a little bit more, because you're risking a lot more of your stack to do that set mining.
And what do you mean by stack sizes like that? Like, how small of a stack size do you have to be before you start making those decisions?
I suppose if you're 40 or less, depending on it's opponent dependent. The people that are raising, what are they raising with? And are you willing to set mine 10% of your stack at that point in time to set mine, I guess. Yeah. How much of your stack are you willing to put into the pot when you're trying to set mine in that spot?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, and I don't mean to totally take over this conversation, but I don't think my decision really changes until I've got a 15 big blind stack. At that point where I'm really in the all in or shove mode, 20, 25, yeah, I'm glad to throw in an extra 2 big blinds to see if I can flop a set versus 3 other opponents. I just feel like the implied odds that I have there are still great.
No, that's good.
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying with playing tighter from the small blind, and it's something that I've noticed in my own game, and I've been really folding a lot more from the small blind. But I'm not folding my pocket pairs. So I haven't considered it, and that's kind of why I wanted to bring up this spot, because I've only thought about it from the I've got great implied odds, I'm just going to keep doing it type of thing.
So here's the thing. Next time we play, Taylor,
March 30th.
If you come in the small blind everybody's going to know that you got a pocket pair in your set.
Yeah.
I know. I gave it away now too. There's other instances where it's very.
That's all you could
very
possibly have.
That's the only thing he could have because he folds everything else.
So
or
if
he's going to raise if he's got a big pair.
I'll do it with a few other select hands too, but I'm not going to tell you which ones.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you'll definitely play perfectly versus me.
So Taylor, how does that? I know I hear a couple things happening, and sorry to pick on you a little bit, but you mentioned earlier you're trying to update your 3-betting ranges, which includes, I assume, increasing the polarization. So your 3-bet bluffs and your 3-bet value hands, and you mentioned maybe 3-bet value betting with pocket tens later position. How do we kind of consider? This is for everybody. Taylor, you can or whoever, but if we have aces in the small blind or big blind, and there's a bet and a call behind us, it's pretty good option that we're going to probably 3-bet that to try to get that heads up. Kings, probably. Queens, maybe player dependent. Jacks, who knows? Tens, all the way down. Twos are probably just a call, whatever. But how do we sort of think about, should we be 3-betting our pairs versus just set mining? We obviously talked about a chunk of it, but at what rank are we saying we're going to 3-bet? We're going to value bet this thing. What considerations do we go into play on? Should we be 3-bet value, or should we be 3-betting with jacks, or just set mining with jacks? Queens, set mining with queens. How do we decide which we should be doing? What do you guys think? What are those key drivers there? Or are we always set mining, early in a tournament and just hoping, even with queens, that we hit a queen or an overpair? What's making that decision on, are you 3-betting or are you just calling out of the blinds?
It's probably the level of the tournament that you're in and the players at the player pool.
Let's say we're still early in the tournament, so the average stack's like 100 bigs.
Yeah, is this a MSPT $1,100 buy-in? Or is it a $30 Sunday morning running aces bingo fest?
Well, you tell me what the difference is then. Tell me what the difference is.
Well, the difference is people are not as experienced in the $30, so they're going to play a lot more wider.
Yep.
So you're going to be able to 3-bet for value much more often in that kind of tournament, and you're going to know pretty quickly where you are. In an MSPT, $1,100, where you've got a whole bunch of very accomplished players, you don't have too many soft spots in those tournaments.
Right.
It's going to be very difficult to understand where you are in that type of scenario. So it's a totally different scenario.
So does that make you more prone to put a big 3-bet in with queens to try to just take it down right there on a position? Or does it make you more prone to call and set mine?
No, I'm still going to 3-bet my queens. But I'm not probably going to maybe 3-bet my jacks, but probably tens is where I'm going to start to think about set mining.
Versus in the dirty 30 at running aces, you might be more likely to 3-bet down to your nines or tens or something just because you're doing for value.
Exactly. I could 3-bet for value with 8s or 9s probably in the $30 bingo fest.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, that's good. Okay, so you're looking at the tournament and more so the quality, if you will, or the experience level of the players.
Yeah, the experience. The experience of the player definitely makes a difference.
And you're going to get 4-bet, I believe, less often in the $30 tournament.
Correct.
Don't see a ton of it. And when you do, you pretty much know it's aces or kings.
Exactly.
Whereas you're at a more experienced tournament, somebody might be feeling you out and going to 4-bet you with 9-10 suited just to see what your reaction is, or I don't know.
Yeah, here comes Waz and Alex Mua and all these guys are going to be 4-bet shoving with Jack 9, baby. Let's go.
Exactly.
Yep. Putting the pressure on you. Okay. Yep. Other thoughts on that?
That make a big difference.
Oh, that's good. That's good thought, Rob. So experience level of the players. Other thoughts on how do you play those middle to upper pairs out of the blinds?
I think part of it depends upon what your goal for your overall play style wants to be. If you can get to where, and this is, I think, what Taylor was alluding to with he's trying to widen his 3-betting range to give him more options to be able to 3-bet things and for people to have a more difficult time to play against him. Because if you end up, let's say you 4-bet nothing but aces, and everybody knows that. That means whenever you 4-bet, people know exactly what you have and they can play perfectly against you. And you're guaranteed to win the minimum and lose the maximum,
Right.
pretty much, if people know that. So that's why it's important to not always play straightforward. That's why I always feel like I 3-bet and 4-bet way too little. But it is scary to put a 3-bet out there, especially once you start to get down into your less premium hands. And that's one of the reasons why Taylor was also mentioning the nonlinear range, so that you can have some hands that are definitely based upon the quality of that hand. It's not worth the 3-bet or the 4-bet, but as an overall strategy, it makes sense, and it protects the equity of your powerful hands because people can't always give you credit. And it gives you an easy, when someone then raises on top of you, you've got an easy decision because you have a crap hand a relative crap hand that you 3-bet with, and now you can throw it.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. Those middling hands, those are the ones you want to see flops with. You want to realize your equity in. If you don't feel like you have much equity against a 4-bet, then those are easy folds. If you have a ton of equity against 4-bets, those are easy shipments.
And does everyone understand when we say nonlinear range?
Go ahead and give it your explanation, Taylor.
Yeah, so essentially, if you can rank all the possible hands that you have from 0 to 100, where like deuce 7 offsuit is 0 and aces is 100, we shouldn't have a 3-bet range that is straight from like 100 to 90, and then a calling range from 90 to 70, because it allows our opponents to play really well against us. It strengthens our 3-betting range and weakens our calling range. But if instead of doing the 100 to 90 raise and then 90 to 70 call, if we make it 100 to 93 as a raise, as well as 70 to 73, and then put the 73 to 93 as a call, we weaken our 3-betting range and strengthen our calling range, which makes it more difficult for our opponents to play against us. Because then we'll get more value from our premium hands, and we'll also kind of strengthen what we're calling with.
Yeah, that was when Steve was doing his pre-flop experiment there in the podcast. About a year ago now, almost, it seems like.
Yeah,
that's what we got talking about. We talked about that polarized range, where you have the top part of your range, you're 3-betting or opening. The bottom part of your range, you're opening or 3-betting, and the middle part is where you're doing your calling against an open.
Yep. Yeah, that was super helpful for me to have you guys help me out with that piece of it. Okay, good. And I think John Somsky said something. Oh, Eric's going to share something here, but one quick comment. Somsky, you shared something too about what's your overall objective on things, and that's sort of what I'm trying to do with my strategy is, any individual piece of it can be challenged, and I love it, and it should be challenged. I think what I'm trying to do in my overall strategy is play a more low variance game, just in general. I'm not afraid of taking the big spots, but I think I'm trying to play that lower variance game, which for me, when that comes to, out of the blinds, when I have those those 10s, jacks, 9s, even queens sometimes, early in a tournament, I may opt to just flat there, just call, and see what transpires the rest of the hand, more so than 3-betting, in part just because I believe that I want to play a more low variance style across the board. So that's another consideration for me. I think the biggest thing about that is as soon as you play a pretty big hand like 10s, jacks, queens passively, you have to recognize that you've played it passively and you've underrepresented your hand. And so you may be setting yourself up to hero call a little bit or call and stay in the hand a little bit more than if you had 3-bet and then more aggression was shown. So I think that's just a warning. Like, your jacks are still going to be good a lot of the time. If you just called out of the blinds, your jacks are still going to be good a lot of the times on a king 7-3 board. It doesn't mean you just have to give up. Eric, were you going to share something there with us?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Hey.
Wow.
Hey, Eric is in.
He can talk.
I was just trying to show that hand range analyzer. We were talking about a polarized range. I don't know if I can share it again.
It showed up for a second, but then we lost it.
Let's try this.
It's starting. There you go. Yep.
But can you see my mouse?
Yes. Over on underneath pokercoaching.com.
The way Jonathan Little explains it is you want on the pre-flop, you want a 2-to-1 bluff to value range. So this is way off. I'm actually just the opposite. If I want to value bet 26%, I want actually about 50% or more as a bluff. And then as you go to the next street, it goes 1-to-1, and then on the turn, you're actually 2 parts value to 1 part bluff. So I'd actually want to change this and get these to more where it's a 2-to-1.
So for folks that don't have the video, what Eric is clicking through right now is a range analyzer, and I'd recommend go to YouTube to check this out. But basically, he can click on the hands that he wants to put in his range that he's 3-betting for value, like aces, kings, queens, that ace king, that sort of thing, and then check the hands that he's going to say, I want these as 3-bets as a bluff, and then ones that he's just going to call. And so it kind of shows all the percentages, so you can kind of get those ranges balanced accordingly. And Eric, you're saying that Jonathan Little is saying kind of 2-to-1 3-bet value versus 3-bet bluff?
Yeah, pre-flop.
Okay.
So this would be a better range to 3-bet. You'd 3-bet the red and the blue and just call on the greens. And I mean, you can also do it the other way where you have a polarized range where you're doing something down here and not doing your high cards. So that way you have more board coverage. But personally, I like to play my big cards.
Okay.
But I just thought this is the first time being able to talk. I'm kind of nervous.
Yeah, I know. We finally got you. After all these weeks of seeing you a little bit and just seeing you in the chat. So
yeah,
glad you're up and running there. Hey, have you guys all? I guess we're getting close to time, but I'm curious if how many of you have actually worked through that process of saying, here's my 3-bet range, and actually kind of worked through the process of even kind of this polarized, non-linear sort of approach. You guys have that worked through yet?
Somewhat. I've done it somewhat. There's certain hands that I look at as, boy, I really want to play this hand, but it's not really in my calling or raising range. And then I'll look at it and say, okay, well, I could 3-bet this based on the opponents that we have. I haven't written it all out, so I could refer to it. But there's a sweet spot where I just kind of feel, okay, this is a 3-bet hand, because if they raise, I can easily fold it. So the determination is, okay, I look at a hand. This is a really neat hand. I really like to play this against that raise. But I wouldn't call with it. It's not a hand that I would call with. So then I'll consider 3-betting it, knowing that I can get away from it if I'm 4-bet. And then there's that range of calling hands that you're always going to call with. And that's what Taylor was kind of talking about, some of those pair hands, those pocket pairs that you're going to call with and set mine, and maybe some of those higher suited connectors like your Jack 10, your 9-10, those types of hands. You don't really want to get bet off of those hands. You want to be able to see a flop with them. But then you got those other marginal hands that are saying, well, this is kind of a good hand, but if I get bet off of it, it's not going to break my heart.
Yep. Others?
I went through the process before of setting up a range of here's what I'm going to open, here's what I'm going to 3-bet, and what I'm going to do as a value versus bluff, etc. And I quickly moved away from it because every situation is different. Just before we were talking about, well, what if the open raiser is in this position versus that position? What if our stack sizes are this or that? Those play so much into what you should be doing in each situation that you kind of realize that if you set up a starting point, it's okay, but that can't be like the set in stone things that you do. In some instances, you're going to have to really widen your 3-betting range, which may feel uncomfortable if you're not used to widening your 3-betting range. And then there's other instances where you should really be tightening it, which doesn't feel as comfortable because I think the majority of people really are happy with calling and not 3-betting in certain spots. So I thought about it and quickly stopped trying to plan something out in terms of my ranges for various spots.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar. I was thinking about that when you asked it, Steve. I think mine is about 70% situational, where I'm actually sitting at the table now, and this is since we've started talking, because 3-4 months ago I wasn't 3-betting except my premium hands. And now I'm kind of looking at each player when I sit down, and I'm kind of watching, kind of looking around for situations where, yeah, that guy, if I get to see his cards at the end, he raised and he ended up showing some hand at the end. I'm like, okay, keep him in mind, and then look for a situation later. And there's a few other people's I go, okay, I think I got an advantage post flop on this guy. So if he does call my 3-bet, I still got a chance to pull down even more money. So that's kind of more my thought right now is I still don't do it a lot, but I'm thinking about it a whole lot more than I used to, thanks to our discussions.
Yeah, I feel kind of the same way. Like, I mean, I went through a lot of work, and you guys are all a part of that process. And I still use those opening ranges quite a bit, but I am more flexible with them depending on situation. But I do think what helped a lot is just we're kind of working through that exercise of formalizing my nonlinear ranges, my polarized ranges, and just thinking that through and being challenged by you guys and other people to kind of think about how I think about 3-betting. Just sort of ingrain that concept in my head of this. Boy, if I have some equity in the hand, I don't want to lose that equity. And I think that's applied to the 3-betting. It's applied to c-betting. It's applied to a lot of different things. So I think for me, because I'm an analytic, I think I needed to kind of work through the details of it all in order to get to the concept that I can now carry into the game. I think for some people, they can just kind of understand this concept and just kind of go with it, never have to get specific. But that process has really solidified some things for me. Even though I still would love to find the magic formula, I just don't think there is one.
Harry Potter has a wand that he uses.
Yeah.
There is no magic wand. You don't have the only person that has white magic is Phil Hellmuth.
Phil Hellmuth, right? Exactly. But as somebody who I like to have the concepts and the principles down. So for me, that's where it's super helpful to kind of work through all the details of that to get that principle embedded in my head.
But then Jonathan Little would tease you about trying to make the game simple. So
I know he does that, right?
Yeah, he did.
Does that. Every time I try to make the game simple, he says, "Oh, you're trying to make the game too simple." Right. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Yep. That is correct.
Well, in the end, I don't think you can really learn how to play the game. You learn how to think about playing the game.
Oh,
it's
Somsky
really
dropping the wisdom.
Well, I mean,
love it.
It's not a rote thing. It's like Taylor said, there are so many situations, so many variables. You have to think about how to evaluate and weigh those variables. And I know enough to know that I'm not very good at that.
Come on, John. And we all know that you're humble enough to say exactly that too. I think for me, as you mentioned that too, and I think that's the holy grail for me. That's the quest that I'm on, and the kind of all these people that we've been interviewing and talking through is, okay, I understand that everything is situational. Everything depends. You talk to Fox, everything depends. Jonathan, everything depends. Right. Depends on what? That's what I'm still trying to get at. And I think little by little, I'm starting to understand position and stack size and player type and all of those things. But that's kind of the holy grail for me is, okay, I'm in a situation. What should I do? Well, it depends. Okay, it depends on what? Like, what are those key things I should really be paying the most attention to? Because I still think I expend too much mental energy on things that aren't the priority. And that's where I want to be able to get into situations and kind of, I maybe immediately don't know what to do, but I immediately know what things I should be considering. To me, that is the holy grail for taking my game to the next level.
And that's why you want to work out your ranges, because if you have them worked out, it clears up that thinking process so you can look for tails, look for stack sizes. If you already know that you're going to play eights or better than ace queen, then you don't have to think about it. You have time to think about something else.
Yeah, no, that's right. Especially for opening hand ranges for me anyway. That's been a huge energy saver for me, is just to know I'm in this position early in the tournament. Here's what I'm going to play. Here's what I'm not going to play. And I don't really think about it anymore. And I think that has preserving that mental energy to focus on other things has helped me immensely, because I know myself and my limitations of my mental energy that I can expend.
And at some point you get to a point where certain things just become reflex. Like when you're playing baseball, you no longer think about, okay, I need to move my glove up here to catch the ball. You just see it, you see how it's coming, and you know where your hand has to be in order to catch the ball. And so that your brain can then be thinking of, okay, once I get it, where am I going to throw it next? And it's the same thing in poker. The more things you can get to where you don't have to think to yourself, that guy looks kind of weak. You just sense it. Or you think, this is a great 3-betting spot or squeeze spot, because you've thought through it dozens of times before, so it just starts to happen. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen as often as we would like.
Right. But I think if we were all to look back on our game, I think we all have those things now that come naturally, that before we just didn't really process or we had to really think about, for sure. Well, good stuff. Anything else that anybody wants to add here as we wrap up? Good discussion, as always. All right. I'm seeing some heads shaking, some eyes closing. So I think we'll wrap it up there. As always, thanks, guys. Man, I love the conversations, and we'll chat next week. If you have any ideas for next week's topics, just shoot them off, and we'll send them out. All right. Well, thank you once again for joining us for another episode of the RecPoker podcast, sponsored by Running Aces Racetrack and Casino. Join us next week as we continue on with our interviews with some great players, and we discuss some specific hand breakdowns. But until then, good luck on and off the felt.